It's been quite a year focused on abuse of women and also empowerment of women this past year. It's just been in the news so frequently, we almost hardly don't notice it anymore, but just in recent news, we've had the case of Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore and the allegations against him involving 14-year-olds. We had recent allegations against our former president, George Herbert Walker Bush, and some of those originally were written off as sort of an affable old man, but in reality, just recently, some of the allegations date back to when he was actually president. We have, these constant reminders of the 16 or so women that have spoken about the abuse that they faced from our current president, and of course, that brings back our memories of what happened when Bill Clinton was president of the country, and how we reacted at the time, and whether our reactions were the best reactions, or how we might have rehandled that if it were to happen now. And those are just the ones that aren't Jewish people. It was Larry David on Saturday Night Live recently who said not all, but many of the people that we're seeing are actually Jewish people. We had, I think it was just last week, former Congressman Anthony Weiner went to jail for inappropriate behavior. Harvey Weinstein has, I think it's like 60 or so women that have come out and talked about the horrible abuse that they've suffered from him. Louis C.K. Also recently came out as a sexual predator, and most recently, just in the last couple of days, we've seen this horrible photo of Senator Al Franken having his way with a woman in her sleep. It's absolutely disgusting. First and foremost, our hearts go out to the victims. We believe them, we support them, and we're here for them. And for those who had a horrible experience in years past and have not yet had the courage to speak about it publicly, for those who do choose to come out in the coming days, I think it's important that we should have their backs. It was the sort of radical political activist Emma Goldman who said, probably in the 1930s or so, true emancipation begins neither at the polls nor in courts. It begins in a woman's soul. I spent some time going through my files to see what does Judaism have to say about sexual abuse and what we're supposed to do. And obviously Judaism is not supportive of sexual abuse, but there really isn't as much as you might expect. On the one hand, there are cases where women are abused in the Torah. We have the story known as the rape of Dinah. Although there's a question as to whether the story is actually about a rape or whether that's the way we've interpreted the story over time. The text is a little bit ambiguous, but certainly her brothers interpreted it as a rape when they went and burned down the entire village of Shechem in revenge. We have other cases. There's one of David's daughters is abused by her brother. And of course we have David and Bathsheba, which we don't know how consensual that may or may not have been. We have some of these cases, but we don't have the kind of laws that we might expect to find in the Holiness Code and the Ten Commandments that would be a little bit more explicit about what it is that thou shalt not do. There is, some information about how wives are supposed to be treated that we find. And basically the general rule is that, abuse is discouraged, although there are some rare occasions where it's unfortunately, according to the rabbis, it would have been permitted in some cases on a minor level, but the Reform movement always rejected that. Basically tenderness and appreciation was always encouraged. And there's 3 passages that I did find. One comes from the Talmud, Eruvin 100b, and it says, "It is forbidden for a man to compel his wife to fulfill the mitzvah." I'll leave it to your imaginations which mitzvah we're talking about, but the point is, he can't compel her. And that's important because particularly in the ancient Near East, there were plenty of cases where women were compelled against their will. And in Judaism, we had this hard, fast rule that was strictly forbidden. There's another passage from Moses Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, where he said, "And thus the sages commanded that a man should honor his wife more than he honors himself, and love her as he loves himself. And if he has money, he should increase her benefits according to his wealth. He should not intimidate her, and he should speak with her gently." So that's the advice of Moses Maimonides, but it's not just marriage counseling advice. I mean, his words were interpreted as the law itself. And then we have the sort of medieval philosopher Abarbanel, who observed that God did not create woman from man's head, that he should command her, nor from his feet, that she should be his slave, but rather from his side, that she should be nearest his heart. I've always been fond of the passage in Mishnah Nida 5:6 that says God gave more wit to women than to men, which sometimes does seem true. So that's sort of what the tradition has to say about our relationship with wives. But there's other passages in our rabbinic literature that really deals more with dignity and making sure that you prevent anyone from experiencing shame. So in Pirkei Avot, one of the later tractates from the Talmud, something from, I don't know, the 4th, 5th century, it says, your friend's dignity should be as precious to you as your own. Now that doesn't explicitly apply to women, but that applies to all people, all human beings. You have to respect someone else's dignity, and there's too many times when, people just get abused. And in any way, whether it's a sexual impropriety or whether it's just, abusing your waiter or the person pumping gas or, the people, picking up your garbage or whatever it is, we have to recognize that any human being's dignity is as precious as our own, and we have to respect that. In the Talmud tractate Bava Metzia, it says that if a person shames his neighbor in public, it is as if he shed his blood, meaning that to bring shame upon anyone publicly in front of other people is equivalent to murder, basically. And so anything that would shame anyone, that would make them embarrassed, that would disparage them in front of other people, must be strictly avoided. It's equivalent to murder. And the last text that I found, and I really wish that there were more, but it's another quote from Moses Maimonides, Hilchot Tlaim, chapter 10, verse 29. He said, a rabbinic prohibition, that's the thou shalt nots, is always and everywhere superseded for the sake of human dignity. Meaning you can violate any of the thou shalt nots that you find in the Torah for the sake of someone's dignity. And it says, even though we're explicitly enjoined in the Torah not to depart from the sages' teachings either to the right nor to the left, this negative precept itself is set aside in the interest of human dignity. So he makes that point to say that you can violate commandments if it's going to preserve someone's dignity. And I just think it's so important for us, first of all, to make sure that we're not abusing anyone else, but when someone does come out, to make sure that we preserve their dignity. And so often, the people that have already been abused, when they finally do choose to become public about it, they get disparaged, and they get publicly shamed, and they get ridiculed, and they get called liars. And it's important for us to make sure that we're supporting them, that we're speaking out against anyone who would disparage anyone who's already experienced that kind of abuse. We come from, although it's in many respects a tradition that is male-dominated in certain regards, they also come from a long line of strong women, you know, when you think of Ruth, and when you think about Esther, and when you think about Yael, or when you think about some of the queens like Alexandra, you know, there were really, and Miriam, for God's sake, you know, Miriam was a prophet up there with Aaron and Moses. You know, we think of it just being Aaron and Moses doing all the hard work, and maybe we don't have as much information about what Miriam did, but it says quite clearly that she was a prophet. She had a direct line to God. She spoke directly to God. She had her own responsibilities and tasks that she was meant to fulfill. We infer that it was largely through music and rallying the people and also helping them find water and sustenance when they were wandering in the desert. But it's out of respect for our women from our history and from the present that we really must take every precaution that we can to preserve the dignity of all people. Thank you. Shabbat shalom. Just a few announcements. One, this Saturday we're doing our paint and sip. It's funny, you know, we asked for RSVPs, and something happened in American culture. I think people just don't RSVP so much. But I begged people in the last week, if you're coming, please RSVP. And we doubled the number of people that are coming in just last week. So thank you to everyone who did RSVP to this. If you would still like to come, but you forgot to RSVP, we could probably still make a spot for you. We'd just like to have you there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have wine, and we'll have all the easels and the paints and everything that you need, and an artist to train us. And over the course of an hour or so, you too will produce a beautiful painting suitable for framing. It's like magic. A couple other announcements. I've got my class, Jews and Food, which is meeting on Thursdays at 7 o'clock. It's been a really fun class. And the Cantor's got a class on Torah cantillation that meets on Tuesdays from 4:30 to 5:30. Whether you've never learned cantillation before, or whether you'd like a refresher, we had a good turnout last Tuesday, and it was a lot of fun. Whether you take the class or not, if you want to participate in our Torathon, we've been taking names, and I think we're going to reach 10 people, to have at least 10 people chanting Torah at our Torathon. So if you've never chanted before, if you've chanted dozens of times, if you know Torah cantillation, or if you'd like to learn Torah cantillation, we're asking anyone who would like to chant 1 to 3 verses to please consider joining us. You have to email either myself or the Cantor to let us know, so that we're gonna have to divide up the portion and assign people parts. But I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I persuaded my son Ezra to chant a couple verses, so that'll be fun. We have the URJ Biennial coming up. And if you'd like to come on our Israel trip, but you haven't let us know. And December 16th, we're going to go to the Litchfield Distillery, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a private tour for just our congregation, and tastings, and a little food to nosh on, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're asking people to RSVP. On this it says RSVP to Rabbi at T Shalom, but if you're going to RSVP to Rabbi at tshalom.org. Don't forget the .org, because I seem to have forgotten that in my message right there. But